Good morning and welcome to the Ask Weldon Show, episode 220. Today, we have some really fun questions, culminating in the question, what are the gender differences in mindfulness? Which I actually didn't know before I looked into it a little bit for this question. And it's very interesting because it's kind of the opposite of what you'd expect from what the questioner is asking or the story that they tell. So that was very fascinating. And we have a couple other questions about fitness and about mental warm-up and about resetting your mindset. Before we get into it, hello, my name is Weldon. This is the Ask Weldon Show, and it's a show about sports psychology or esports psychology, and I answer the questions based on either my own life experience, my own experience as a professional esports psychology trainer, or my background in exercise and sport psychology, which I studied at the University of Jyväskylä in Finland. And no, I'm not... Actually, I am Finnish now. I can't say that. I'm originally from the Midwest in the U.S., lived there till 30. Then I moved to Europe. Any other updates? My swim camp, my summer swim camp week with my kids is almost over, and I was a swimmer for 21 years, and it's been really delightful to see them enjoy the water, and I was able to get in the water, which is really exciting. I ended my career hating the pool because I spent so many hours of my life in it, up to 6 hours a day, 7 days a week, towards the last few years of my career. And yeah, so you kind of get burnt out. Like 15 years later, I'm still burnt out from the pool. But it's still fun to see my kids enjoying being wet and enjoying swimming around and having fun in the water. And it's nice to have a skill set. So whenever I do go in the water, I can pull anything off that I want to and have fun with them. And tread water while holding up a kid in each hand. So that's helpful. And various other fun tricks and tips, not tips and tricks. Lots of other fun tricks. Anyway. And once that's over, I'll be back to my normal streaming schedule. So I'll be able to go to stream and then go to the gym and then go to work and then go to bed on time, which is kind of being disrupted this week from this summer swim camp. But that's fine. It's summer. Time to take time off and enjoy life. And it's still cold here. You guys, I don't recommend summer in Finland. The reason summer in Finland is nice is because of winter in Finland. So winter in Finland is pure hell and darkness, and summer in Finland, the sun doesn't go down. So it's kind of a fun contrast, It's a contrapositive. You feel very, very good about it because it's not the other thing. But the fact that it hasn't really gone above 13 degrees in 2 weeks is a big... And for you Fahrenheit folks, that's like it being below 60 every day. It's not warm. I'm literally wearing like a jacket around town. Like yesterday I wore jeans and a button-up shirt and I was freezing as we were trundling around. People were wearing scarves and hats. I mean, that is ridiculous in my opinion. Go to Florida where it's 90 or 100. All right, let's jump into the show. Okay, the first question today is from Leo, a frequent caller into the show. Let me pull out this mic. And he's going to ask us about... He actually has two questions for us. So let's hear them. Let me get them ready here.
Hello, Weldon. It's Leo, the badminton player. I've got two questions for you today. The first one is about the preparation before a match. I try to warm up myself physically on the optimal way, but I'm not sure I'm doing the same mentally. I try to do the same routine every time, to listen to music, but I wanted to know if I could tell myself something like mantra, and if it's helpful, and if it is, what should be the mantra that I use. And the second question is about reset mindset. The last day I was really tilted. I feel like I couldn't play, and I know that was purely mental, but I couldn't reset myself even with gratefulness. Does that mean I'm not enough good in gratefulness for now? Or do you know other way to reset my mindset? Thanks a lot.
All right, so let me tackle these in opposite order from the order they were asked. First of all, resetting your mindset when you already tried to reset it and it doesn't work. the best thing to do is not reset your mindset and just play. So I would use a mantra like, I want to play, but I'm super tilted or I'm super frustrated or whatever. And I would say, I want to play and I'm super frustrated and super tilted or whatever. So just change the but to and make your mind not interfere with what you're doing. Just do what you want to do and ignore your mindset. So don't reset it. Don't make it a precondition upon which you must have in order to perform. There's nothing that our emotional state has over our physical actions that gives it control. We give it control. We choose to satisfy emotional conditions and mindset for various evolutionary reasons. But there's actually no power within that. You can, at any point that you wish, do exactly what you want to do, or what you desire to do, or what you have ambition to do, rather than what you feel like doing. And so the best way to recover from an unresettable mindset is just to not worry about your mindset and just do what you need to do, regardless. Okay, so jumping into the first part of the question, mental warm-up. There's two answers to this question. I think that what I know is that in competition, the skill set that you need is the ability to refocus consistently on the present moment in a non-judgmental way and to focus on the task rather than the outcome of the match. And so one of the best things to do, in my opinion, is to get used to the concept of in-sport mindfulness, which means doing some mindfulness training and feeling what it feels like to constantly refocus your attention and to drop judgmental thoughts and to focus on the task instead of the outcome and to think about kind of those concepts. And I believe that that's probably the most important way to rehearse the skills that you're going to need in a few minutes. However, the other answer is that there's a lot of research on individual zones of optimal functioning, which is the correct emotional makeup for your peak performance state, your flow state. And there's even a scale that you can use, the psychobiosocial states scale, which comes in a 20-question, a 40-question format. I've even adapted it down to 12 questions that allows you to essentially diagnose your psychological, biological, and sociological states and to try to figure out what your eyes off is using a kind of a graph. And so you can do some sort of performance intervention training program with, like, for example, a sports psychology trainer, or you can try to, there's no handy manual for this that you can do it yourself that I know of. I mean, I've looked for one. I've made one of those, actually, but I haven't made one for passing out. Probably I should do that. But you can, at the time being, you can check out books like Emotions in Sport by Yuri Hanin, which is a really good manual on the eyes off model, and you can craft a concept of like what your peak performance cocktail of emotions is and what your your opposite, like the worst case scenario cocktail of emotions. And what you'll find, generally speaking, is there's a lot of overlap, but there's some key negative emotional states that show up in the worst possible performance that don't show up in the best possible performance, and then those are the ones that have to go away. So you can develop a pre-performance routine that kind of gets those to not show up. And you cannot develop a pre-performance routine based on the idea of trying not to think about those things, because that will never work. Ironically, what that usually does is increase the things that you're trying not to think about. Rather, you construct a pre-performance routine that lasts anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes that includes things that prepare you for the productive emotions of performance. And I'll give you some examples. There's things that you want to do to increase your adrenaline and there's things that you want to do to increase your testosterone for a while before the competition. So you can ruminate on thoughts about competitive mastery, about lasering it in. You can do group activities, things that like bring you close and trust and build the trust and the trustworthiness of your circle of competitors. And then right before the competition, you want to do things that increase your adrenaline. So essentially what you're trying to amp up productive internal states. You're You're trying to ramp down unproductive internal states. You're trying to ramp up testosterone in the half an hour prior to the competition, and you're trying to ramp up adrenaline in the 5 minutes prior to the competition, because these things have short half-lives, right? So you're not really gonna. It doesn't matter if you ramp up adrenaline 30 minutes before the competition, because it's going to be gone within 7 to 10 minutes anyway from your bloodstream. So yeah, don't do it too early, I would say. About music, in terms of using music to regulate your emotional state, there have been studies on it, and there are some clear-cut findings about how good you are at using music to regulate your emotional state means how useful it is. So if you don't use it and you don't want to use it, you don't need to use it. It will have no impact that you can't get from other places. But if you do use it and you use it well, then you can use it to kind of tailor your competitive mindset before you jump into a competition. So yeah, that's the mental warm-up. The most important thing is the physical warm-up in terms of your body, like number one, if you're doing a physical sport. And then for mental warm-up, I would recommend practicing the skills that you're going to need to perform well, which is, refocusing. And then secondly, consider something like the eyes off model and try to figure out what your best performance state is, and craft a pre-performance routine based on that information. And unfortunately, I don't have a handy manual to give you. So I would just search eyes off online, IZOF. You'll find a bunch of probably sports psychology looking articles written in magazines, hopefully some of which give you some insight. Individual zone of optimal functioning is the term. All right, let's jump into the second question from Max. Do not restart my computer. Jeez.
Hey Weldon, it's Max, and I've been a big-time fan of yours. Found you when you were on the NALCS hype train. So my question for you today is about fitness. I'm a former All-American rugby player, and I've been really into video games my whole life, but I've noticed that the communities they diverge heavily at the point of fitness. I was wondering if, when you've worked with a lot of these pro players and there were level zeros in fitness, they didn't have any fitness background, how would you get them started in fitness? I'm trying to help out some friends and potentially eventually market a program that would help people get from zero to hero, per se. Have a good one. Thanks for answering this. Bye.
All right. Thank you, Max, for this great question. And this is actually part of the reason that I went to school. I have a degree in exercise psychology, not just sports psychology. So I was very interested in how to bring, basically to defeat obesity and diabetes in the United States. That's why I came and did my degree in the first place. And that's what my master's thesis was actually on, was physical activity through life transitions. So as you go from junior high school to high school to college, college to career life, single to married, no children to children. So obviously in each of these transitions, it's been clearly shown through research that physical activity levels drop. And then part of what the research community is trying to find out is what are the barriers to physical activity that cause this to happen, and what are the antecedents to physical activity that we can use to, try to push physical activity levels up to kind of stop this from happening. And right, so how do you start with counseling somebody for exercise who's at fitness level 0? And the answer is really straightforward. Movement. So movement is far healthier than non-movement. And what you might think of as exercise, Max, you need to erase from your brain. Okay? Get rid of the whole concept of exercise and replace it with the words physical activity. Okay? P.A. P. A. P period A period. Physical activity is going from 0 to 100 miles an hour. You don't need to go from 0 to 500 miles an hour, which is exercise. What you need to do is go from 0 to 1, and that is getting physically active. And physical activity is easier to sell because the benefits are so extreme compared to sedentarianism. And also, turns out that sedentarianism has its own impact on health, which is quite drastic. And until you get to a certain level of exercise, you're not going to be able to offset that. So, but what I mean by that is that over the last 10 years, it has been discovered that exercise and being sedentary are not two ends of a single spectrum. So that if you exercise, the effects of being sedentary go away. And rather, exercise is its own thing, and being sedentary is other own thing. So let's say that you exercise, 60 minutes, super intense, like incredibly vigorous exercise, and then you go sit on your butt for 8 hours. Well, you're going to have the effects of somebody who exercises for 60 minutes very vigorously, and you're going to have the effects of somebody who sits on their butt for 8 hours, independently, those two things, okay? Because you did sit on your butt for 8 hours. So you're going to have the cellular damage and the issues that go along with that. You're also going to have the benefits of exercise. So some of those overlap, which means that you're not really going to erase them, but you're going to do this one, and then you're gonna help yourself, and then you're gonna harm yourself, right? And so what is really important is reducing sedentary behaviors on one spectrum and increasing physical activity behaviors on the other. So if you look at somebody who's walking around 4 hours a day and sitting 4 hours a day, and then like doing miscellaneous household chores, whatever, for 4 hours a day, they're sedentary for 4 hours. They're crushing you if you're being sedentary for 10 hours. They're massacring you in terms of health outcomes, even though you might get way more exercise if you exercise in a gym for 30 minutes. They're doing much less sedentaryism. Now, depending on the quality of your exercise, you might have slightly better health outcomes in the long term, but likely sedentary behavior has a stronger impact on that. And physical activity and non-sedentary behavior is the most important thing to aim for. So start by trying to figure out how to get them moving in every possible opportunity. And I always start by looking at the like ecological environment. So, for example, having standing desks and making people do standing desk stuff whenever they're not, playing or training or whatever. For like an hour, for 30 minutes, if they're just watching YouTube, that kind of stuff. You can get standing desks at IKEA now for $250, and they can be, up and down. So it works well like that. Then the other things that you do are trying to, whatever possible, make commuting and locomotion have physical activity in it. So we at TSM, we had a Red Bull training facility we would go to, and I'd force them to walk there. At LCS, I would have them try to walk there whenever we could. Or when we were Ubering places, you try to get the Uber to drop you off farther away from the place so that you have to walk at least 5 minutes, 10 minutes to get there. You can also walk to your Uber pickup points. You can, if you're driving, you can park farther away and walk there. Go to malls, park at the opposite side of the mall, walk there. Just lots of ways to like kind of hack a little bit more walking into your life. And then of course, walking around after training. So physical activity after your training, or even in the morning, like as part of your morning routine, is a really great way to do it. We did walking mindfulness in some of the teams I was in. So just increasing physical activity in the ecological system. Then you want to have an activity plan. So what I did was I created an activity plan, and independent of the person. So I would create, not independent of the person, an independent activity plan per person. So do not have like a blanket program in your mind for any one person, but rather talk to them, figure out what they like to do, how they like to move their body, what sounds interesting to them, what is motivating to them, because the number one and only thing that matters is motivation and attrition, whether or not they adhere to it or whether they attrition from it, whether they fall off. So that, given that that's the only thing that matters, then the only thing that you need to do is find out the most exciting thing to them and then support it, which means you increase the motivation for it by teaching them how it's going to help them, how it will improve their performance. So look it up, find ways of arguing how physical activity increases performance, of which there is lots and lots of research that you can use and cite. But I'm going to let you kind of do that work because I don't want to bore the people with the show. But then the other thing you could need to do is reduce barriers. So and by the way, social intervention is another way to increase motivation. People doing it together is more fun. And also social interventions where they talk about the barriers that they face, even if you don't do anything about them. But if you talk about ways of tackling them, and you talk about the barriers that you face with other people who face those barriers and try to come up with solutions, also can reduce barriers in the long run. So try to take away things that stand in their way and, motivate them to do it. That's it. That's the only thing you got to do. And by the way, if you're looking at what physical movement actually increases esport performance the most, I asked my buddy, who is an expert on the cognitive impact of physical activity, and he said probably the thing that lines up with the research most right now is stuff involving the arms. So coordinated, complex movement that requires constant focus and adjustment with your arms probably has the biggest impact after an esport training day on the learning effect of the skills that you learned with your mouse and keyboard. So that would be basically basketball and juggling, maybe playing catch, things like that. All right, that's my long, convoluted, in-depth answer to your question. Okay, last question of the day. Before I jump into it, it is about the MAC program, and it is about mindfulness, so I wanted to talk about the MAC program. It is the program that I have created, Mindfulness Acceptance Commitment Program. First of all, the name of the program is obviously from the original program, which is like a 7-week, once a week, 1 hour a week session kind of thing by 2 scientists who published the book, which I have here somewhere. Where's the title? Something about human performance. Maybe this is it? Nope. It's a really convoluted scientific title that I can never remember. But anyway, I adapted it to a session a day and added a bunch of stuff and have turned it into the MAC program. So this is my solution for all the people who contact me and want to have one-on-one sessions. I've created a training program that essentially mirrors what I do with pro teams. So this is an online video training course. You watch 47 videos sequentially per day, 7 modules over 7 weeks. So it takes about 2 months to complete. And every single video is a mindfulness training session and a lecture, kind of like a mini TED Talk with slides that takes you through the contents and the topics and the ideas of mindfulness-based performance enhancement. And you can check it out at mindgames.gg/MAC, and the reports that I get from it are pretty fun and pretty astronomical. I just got a comment today on Twitch from a Twitch user named Mikausitis, and he says, your program really did help me. Thanks. Did a trail climb, was mindful 50 to 60% of the way up, managed to improve my time by 5 minutes. Downhill, I managed to stay mindful for 80 to 90% and got extremely close to my set goal time. Truly does help. And then he says, the Mac works. So there you go. You heard it from the horse's mouth. Check it out, and let's jump into the final question of the show.
Hey, Weldon.
Hey, Rob.
This is Rob.
Oh.
My question is there any scientific data on whether mental resilience programs like the MAC program affect men and women differently? Personally, the MAC program has been tremendously helpful for me and my other guy friends because we tend to fixate and be absorbed with the things we like to do, and the MAC program trains us to be hyper-aware. While some of my female friends have tried the MAC program, they haven't found it to be as helpful for them personally, and I was wondering if it's because they are less prone to fixation. I know these are personal anecdotes, which is why I'm asking if there's any data on the topic. Thanks.
Yes. Okay, Rob. So I went ahead and looked, and there is some data on the topic, and I'm not well-versed yet. So I haven't read the research studies, but I've read the abstracts and the findings. And so what I need to do is dive into the research and see how well constructed it is and what the methodologies are. But it's the opposite of what you perceive, that women are actually worse at ruminating and fixating, that they do it much more than men, and that mindfulness actually has a much larger impact on men than it does on women in terms of mindfulness training. So when I think about what the gender studies show, what the studies show in terms of gender differences, which is that mindfulness helps women more than men, and that women start off like worse than men in terms of their self-rumination and their fixation and their kind of negative thoughts, that probably the biggest issue that you're seeing with, or in your anecdotal experience of girls who are not interested in the MAC program is simply motivation. The way that the MAC program is couched is a mastery-based focus on video games, right? That's the kind of like setting that we have. So there's a setting for a mindfulness training program, one that is I think of it as a pedagogical environment or a teaching environment where you create a narrative or a story in which you try to generate motivation from the listener or the participant in order to help them like keep up with the training and to deal with creating ideas and self-talk around the concepts of mindfulness in their mind and how they're using it. And I am a guy, and I'm basically made this program for people who are playing video games kind of single-mindedly and trying to assist them with that issue, and using the pursuit of mastery in those video games to essentially to like better themselves. So I think that it's more the context of the motivational climate in the program that would have an impact on whether or not men or women enjoy it, versus whether or not mindfulness actually is more powerful. Which, by the way, here's a little comment. Women's negative mood decreased more, and their mindfulness and self-compassion improved more compared to men's. Women's boosted mood was directly associated with enhancements in all 5 facets of mindfulness skills, and all 6 subscales of self-compassion skills: more self-kindness and less tendencies to self-judge and over-identify with emotions. For men, the improvements in mindfulness and self-compassion reported after a 12-week program were not directly associated with improvements in negative emotions. Additionally, men improved in mindful non-judgment and non-reaction, but did not improve in their ability to mindfully observe and describe. So, very interesting. I'm now going to read, thanks to you, I'm going to tackle all of the research on gender differences in mindfulness, because one of my goals of my program was to, in this app, to tailor the program much more gender agnostic, or to have different versions for 2 different case studies. Case study 1 being the person who is playing a video game in a training-like way, a single video game in a training-like way, and who is trying to seek mastery in that video game and wants to use that mastery seeking to improve their life. Case 2 being a person who is using games for escapism, so able to play many different games in a given day, and who is struggling with the fact that it's an online game. So you can play tons of games in your house on your Nintendo without any sort of problem, but as soon as you go online and you have all sorts of like online interactions and streaming and negative experiences with kind of like other people who are with the player base, then you run into a problem where the game is not serving its original purpose, which is escapism and entertainment, and instead it becomes a stressful, hostile environment. And turning it back into using mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, I think it's called, you can then hopefully take control of that environment again and start to enjoy video gaming again. So that is going to be the second kind of like sub-theme running through the program as I'm designing it for the app. So I believe that what you noticed, that women were less the women that you know that tried it out were less motivated by the program, probably will drop when I address other reasons for the program to, or like other reasons for the program to exist, yes, and to do mindfulness training, but another motivational climate put in the program of like, this will help you with mindfulness-based stress reduction regarding online play and interacting with a player base or a team. So yeah, thanks for the question, and thanks for pointing out this very interesting topic for me, and I will hopefully know much more about it in a few weeks. Whoops, I was supposed to change the scene there to answer that question. My bad. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in for the show, and make sure to check out the Mac program. If you are interested, use the code AskWeldon, by the way. Do not forget to use the code. I put that code AskWeldon there so that you get a $5 discount, so I would know you came from YouTube. Remember, it's the same program that I did with CLG and TSM and all of these pro teams that I want to perform better. So if you're interested in mindfulness-based performance enhancement, it is the program for you right now. If you want the stress reduction part, you can do it. And as long as you do the training, it will work. but it might not be very motivating to not hear about the stories that you want to hear about every single day. That's it. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Come join me on Twitch, twitch.tv/mindgamesweldon, where I'm headed right now. Bye.